All right. Should we do this?
Yeah. Look, I found my notebook.
Oh, the missing notebook.
The missing notebook was in a bag full of office stuff in my trunk.
Oh, okay. Because
I just forgotten that I put it in there, and I brought in a load of stuff that was in my back seat and forgot that I also had stuff in the trunk.
See now, my headphones don't have glitter on them this time.
Shame.
I know.
That really offered that certain something.
Yeah, it really did. All right. I think I start this time?
That is what I show in my notes.
Did you find your notebook and then update it based on last time? Yeah, okay, you did. That's true nerd stuff. You know what I mean? Is to be like, the notebook has to be complete.
Well, as I was going through and deciding what books I wanted to talk about, I had to flip back through my notebook and make sure that I hadn't talked about it before.
Oh, okay.
I need those notes.
All right. That's actually a good way to do it. I usually go to the podcast feed and then look through, but it's not as good because it takes longer.
Yeah.
You're smarter than I am.
Thank you.
Let's be real. You know.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I remember my wife was going to do a spreadsheet. She's like, I could make a spreadsheet of all the books you guys read, and then that way it'd be easy. And I was like, yeah, please do. She hasn't.
I've thought about doing that as well, and I have not done it either. So I can hardly be mad at her when it's, a thing about me, and I'm not doing it either.
Well, I'm going to drop divorce papers and then just be like, I'm going to just start signing this. And if you wanted to start, the problem with being married to me, for me, is that getting divorced from me is not a real threat.
I was going to say, I'd be like, well, I'd call Cassie up and be like, you had a good run.
Yeah, you did what you could. I think you got out at a good time. Okay. Well, welcome to Why Did You Read That? A podcast that asks the question, why did you read that?
Wow.
Starring me, Peter.
And me. I'm Meagan.
And I'm Meagan.
That's me.
And on this show, what we do is...
No, we're not doing this part anymore.
Oh, yeah, we decided to not explain it anymore?
On.
Okay, we're just going to move on. So you're going to tell a joke.
I am.
And then I will see if I like it or not.
It's a good one.
All right, I'm ready. The smirk on your face makes me real nervous.
How much did the pirate spend on piercings?
What do pirates? Doubloons. Treasure, peg legs, parrots. I don't know.
A buccaneer.
I like that one. That's a pretty good one.
That's a good one.
Okay.
Yep.
I like the word buccaneer. I feel like that's a weird word that has there's not like a modern version of it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not like we've taken the word cowboy and, it has like sort of other uses of like cowboy up, you know what I mean? Or whatever.
He's a real cowboy of the industry.
Yeah. It's kind of come to mean like a maverick or something.
Right.
But like, I feel like buccaneer has not gotten its, revamp yet to be like, look at this buccaneer.
It's a good word.
Get a load of buccaneer over here. We're going to have to come up with something. Maybe someone who's really good at recommending books.
Sure, yeah. It's gonna sweep the nation.
Yeah. If you want something to be super successful, attach it to books.
Buccaneer.
Whoa! Oh man.
We had a moment. You were all here for it.
It happened. I was organic in the room.
Yep.
This is the magic of podcasts. This is why you listen to this. All right. So I've got my 4 books.
I'm ready. I have a pen and everything.
One of them I might have brought before, maybe 2, but maybe just 1.
Cheating.
I know. Well, I didn't do it on purpose, but I'm looking at them and I'm nervous.
All right.
Okay. The first one is Choose Your Own Adventure #1, Cave of Time by Edward Packard.
Okay.
Not to be confused with Choose Your Own Adventure #1, which is like about a Bigfoot or an abominable snowman or something. That was like a second series. So this is the OG Choose Your Own Adventure. The next one is a book called Gantz, Gantz, by Hiroya Oku.
Okay.
That is a manga.
Okay.
The next is a book called, well, I guess I can give you a little brief thing. It's a violent manga.
Okay.
The next is called The Art of Noticing by Rob Walker.
Oh, the previous one was the violent manga, not
Yes.
The Art of Noticing. I was like, what a strange
The
title
Art of
for
Noticing.
a violent manga.
The Art of Noticing someone's head being separated from their body with a sword. No, The Art of Noticing is a completely different book.
Okay,
it's
gotcha.
kind of like a lot of little, I don't know what you'd call them, maybe mindfulness exercises,
Okay.
but maybe not that hippie-ish.
Okay.
And the last one is one many people have heard of, Dragon Ball Z by Akira Toriyama.
All right.
And I came to talk about because I had never read it, and I decided to read it, and I have thoughts.
TM.
Yeah.
Okay. I am curious about The Art of Noticing.
Okay. So The Art of Noticing is a book that I've had on my shelf for a little while, and it's like a lot of different little exercises you can do. And it's, I guess the idea is kind of like slowing down. I use the word mindfulness, and I hate that term because I feel like these days it's like everybody's got, and everyone's like, I'm going to make a YouTube video about how I journal every day, and that's mindfulness or something, or like, here's my mindfulness practice or something. It's like, I feel like there are many versions of mindfulness that have been packaged and sold, and it's like, well, if I do this, then I'll be mindful and I'll be happy. And it's like, okay, but actually what we're doing is just buying another thing, which is how we got in this in the first place and why we're not happy.
Right.
And then maybe I can buy my way out this time. Anyway, I'm not accusing this book, by the way, of being that mercenary.
Right.
It's, it's a packaged product, but at the same time, it's not like I don't think it's an evil product. I suppose it could be. I suppose this Rob Walker character could be some nefarious guy who's using mindfulness ideas to, I don't know.
A regular old Lex Luthor.
Yeah. Yeah, he's playing 3D chess of some kind that I can't understand. And it's like, well, once everybody has taken a sound walk, that'll, I don't know. So yeah, it's like, I don't know, 130 or something different things you can do. And it's stuff like taking a sound walk, which is like, instead of going out and taking pictures, record a bunch of sounds, when you take a walk. So like, I don't know, bird calls or like whatever, and like create like a sort of sound journal. And you could do something like that. Or one of the ones I liked a lot was like a number walk, which is like if you're out in the world, like let's say you're at the airport and you're just like bored and whatever, you kind of try and look around and you try and find a number 1. Then you try and find a number 2. And then you try and find a number 3, and it's pretty easy. But then you get to like 154 and it becomes very difficult.
Right.
So this is a game you could play over a very long period. And it's a little bit where I'm feeling like an old man because I'm like, these are like the kind of games that your mom would make up in the car because she's like, stop asking me how far we are from the Grand Canyon because the answer is
a license
far.
Plate game.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So some of them feel a little like that. Some of them are wildly impractical and I'm like, I'm never going to do that. And some of them are artsy fartsy, but there are a lot of them that I'm like, I don't know, it would be interesting. It's like a little bit of getting you out of your normal routine or something, but not in a horrible way.
Yeah.
It's not like, go and make a new best friend.
Right.
And you're like, oh, that's realistic.
Yeah.
It's more little things. Most of them you can do yourself.
Yeah.
I think almost all of them, if not all of them, it's not like you need special equipment or something. It's not like he's like, fly to Europe and set up an easel and watercolor paint something. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, I bet I would feel pretty good if I was doing that. Anyway, it's a very interesting book. I think it's a little tilted probably towards living in bigger cities as opposed to smaller places, but I don't think it would severely limit you. I also think these are really useful for people like me who like don't enjoy travel. And it's like, well, you could make a game out of sitting in the airport, and doing things like that. It does also kind of get into, that thing that people call gamification, which is another term I've come to hate because I feel like it was adopted by evil corporate overlords to be like, hey, what if we made your work a game where you came in and worked today and then you work even harder tomorrow?
Right.
Isn't that an awesome game? And I'm like, no, that sucks. It's a terrible game. Like, there's a reason that's not it's not like when people suggest gamification like that, I'm like, the problem with my life is not that I have never thought, like, what if I worked harder? Maybe it would be more fun if I worked harder. And it's like, probably not.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the case. Anyway, so it's like, it's all these things that I shouldn't like mindfulness and gamification. But I think it's written in a much more casual style. I think it's a lot more suggesting options.
Right.
And it's also very realistic.
Yeah.
It's not suggesting things that the average person couldn't access or do very easily.
Well, there's nothing wrong with mindfulness or gamification. It's just the way they've been, taken over.
Yeah, it feels like, I guess I'm just so cynical right now. It's like I can't help but when I see that stuff, feel like I'm in some weird corporate seminar that's like basically like, do you think you could work a little harder?
Yeah.
And I'm like, just ask me to work harder. Just whatever I'm not doing that you want me to do, just tell me to do that instead of trying to convince me that I want to do that.
Yeah.
But like,
there is something nice about like almost tricking your brain into paying attention to new things.
Yeah.
It's like, there was a year where I was going to try to do the take a photo a day challenge, for a year.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't last the year, but while I did like probably 4 or 5 months worth.
Yeah.
And while I was doing it, I remember really enjoying, because you have to like, all of a sudden when you're taking a new photograph every day, you have to like, if you're not going to take like a selfie every day, then you have to start looking for like interesting things to take a picture of.
Right.
And you start noticing like, all of a sudden I was like, was that fire hydrant always near my house?
Right.
I don't think I ever noticed it before, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a little way of becoming more aware of things around you and, stuff you might never have noticed before.
Yeah. Yeah, like the apartment we live in right now is being painted. The building's being painted and like they put the house numbers back up. And we were walking yesterday and I was like, are those always there? Are those the same numbers from before or are these new numbers?
Yeah.
And both of us were like, I have no idea. And I was like, I guess that's just something that was always there that we never noticed.
Yeah.
And
it becomes
so,
part of the scenery.
Yeah. So I think that's what this is. It's kind of like a little way to like, I'll be cheesy for a second and say like, I think a lot of people like when they go on vacation, especially somewhere that's really different from where they live, I think you notice a lot more things.
Yeah.
Like you notice like what's different because everything's different.
Yeah.
And you notice like the different fashion, the different behaviors, the different, the sign that's up in the window of the store that says the health grade they got in New York City. And you're like, every place has this. This is so weird, And so I think this is a little bit of a way to have, I don't know if I would specifically say the fun of being on vacation. I'm not going to sell it that hard, but like to be in a mindset of like being a little bit more interested in what's going on.
Right.
Instead of just kind of putting your head down and like plowing through another miserable day.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like too, like around here, it doesn't rain very often. It's not like cloudy very often. So whenever it is like a cloudy day, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I feel different and I'm like, oh, it's just like, I don't know, it's different. And so maybe it's like a little bit of a way of feeling like, oh, it's something's different's happening right now.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's the art of noticing.
All right. I like it. Okay. I brought, my first book is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi.
That's on my list.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Water Moon by Samantha Sato Yembao. Just Our Luck by Denise Williams, and Traveling on the Path of Joni Mitchell by Ann Powers.
I want to hear about Before the Coffee Gets Cold, because it's on my list, and maybe I'll either bump it up or remove it, depending on what I'm about to hear.
Well, I really liked it.
Okay.
I thought it was... So there's this whole trend happening now of like cozy Asian fiction.
Yeah.
Where it's like things that happen in, Japan or Korea, and they're like a little bit magical realism, but very also grounded in reality. And they are like little feel-good kind of stories. And this is in that sphere.
There's like a bookshop one, right, that's very popular. And the Kamigawa Food Detective.
Yeah, I've read that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, I've been enjoying, like, I like cozy fiction, and I like to read things in like environments that I'm not familiar with. So like this trend is like right up my alley. It's for me. So
something I'm interested is trending.
I'm here for it. So Before the Coffee Gets Cold is set in Japan, and it's set in this little cafe that it's like a coffee shop. And it is possible in this coffee shop to travel in time.
Okay.
But there are very specific rules.
Okay.
So there's only one seat in the cafe that will work for this.
That's the time travel seat?
That's the time travel seat. And usually it is occupied by a ghost who sits there all day and all night reading a novel. And she only gets up occasionally to use the toilet.
Okay.
And while she is gone, you can sit in that seat. But you have to wait for it to happen. Like if you try to convince her to leave, she will curse you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's like rule number 1 is you have to sit in this seat.
Okay.
Rule number 2 is that you can only travel to this, like in the same place. So you can travel to the past in the cafe. Like you can't travel to the past in Boston.
Oh, okay.
Like you will remain in the cafe and you have to stay in your seat the whole time.
Interesting.
And you will only visit people, like you'll only be able to see people who have also visited that cafe.
Okay.
So like if you wanted to go into the past to talk to like a dead relative, they would have to have also been in the cafe sometime for you to be able to see them.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Another rule is that right when you travel to the past, they pour you a fresh cup of coffee. You have to have drunk the entire cup of coffee before it gets cold. That will bring you back to the present. And if you don't finish your coffee before it gets cold, you become the next ghost.
Okay, so what does this book in like a minutes framework, does the book propose how long that takes, and or what would be your estimation of like a cup of coffee? How long does it take?
Well, so it's I think 4 chapters, and each chapter is a visit. You know, somebody using the chair to travel in time. And based on the conversations that they have, I would say it is somewhere in the vicinity of 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Somewhere in that like time frame.
This is a very like it's like a very writery thing. Is they always say like when you're writing and you want to express time, you should use anything but minutes.
Right.
You know, like it takes me 2 songs on the radio plus a commercial break to get to work.
Right.
Instead of saying it takes me 10 minutes to get to work.
Right.
So it's kind of great because it's like an intuitive amount of time, but it's not exactly like I know it's not an hour.
Right.
But I know it's also not 30 seconds.
Right.
And so it can be a little vague.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the major rule is that nothing you do when you travel is going to change the present.
Oh, okay.
So like if you know that like someone is going to, you know, get lung cancer from smoking, you can't go into the past and say you're going to get lung cancer from smoking. You have to stop smoking. And they stop smoking and don't get lung cancer. Like
Right.
nothing you do, nothing you say will change anything about the present.
So you can say it, but it changes nothing.
Right.
It's not like, what was that? There was that TV show where the guy got the newspaper for the next day, one day early.
I kind of remember that.
It was like Morning Edition. Is that what that was called? Something like that.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, so then he would be like, I got to save this kid from getting hit by a bus, you know?
Right.
And like,
Yeah, that's not how it works. in
okay.
this. And so you just get, and it's like the people who choose to travel in time have, very normal everyday reasons.
Mhm.
And sometimes they're sad, and sometimes, I don't know, you almost feel like it feels like, a fruitless endeavor because you're like, why would you even go? Because nothing's going to change. But the conversations that they have and the way that things work out, I don't know, it just feels nice. It's cozy. Like it's called cozy fiction for a reason, I think. So like you have the first pair is this woman who she goes to the cafe with her boyfriend, and he breaks up with her because he's going to move to America and get his dream job. And she's brokenhearted. And so she goes back in time, even though they make her understand, like, he'll still leave. He's still going to leave. He's still
Right.
going to go to America. But it's almost like they get some form of peace from the interaction. And, like, I don't want to go too much in depth about
Sure.
things because, like, the experience of reading it is where the joy is.
Right.
But, like, you have one story where it's this woman who gets broken up with. You have another story where it's a woman whose husband has developed Alzheimer's and has forgotten who she is. You get one where it's a woman who wants to visit her sister who has recently died. And you get one that's a mother and daughter that it's a bit in depth. So that one I'm not really going to touch, except that it's
Okay.
a mother and daughter, but it was really nice. And I don't know, they all they're not, Pollyanna,
Right.
everything's wonderful and you can fix everything and be happy. It's more like you follow these characters becoming content with their situation. Like working through whatever is going on around them and coming to a place where they can be happy even though there has been sadness. I don't know. It was really nice. I liked it a lot. And there are several volumes now. This was a
Yeah.
runaway bestseller in Japan.
Interesting.
And so they've had, I think, 4 or 5 different volumes of Before the Coffee Gets Cold. And they are being translated bit by bit and imported to the U.S. So at least 2 or 3, I think, are available here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know there's a couple at this point.
Yeah.
I like how sometimes something that I feel when I've read, especially Japanese books, is that they do have less of the I don't know. And what I learned was this, you know what I
Right.
mean? And it's a little more ambiguous.
Yeah.
And it kind of, it's like, as the kids would say, it's like less that, it's more vibes. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't want to say it doesn't tell you how to feel, but it gives you enough information to feel something.
Yeah.
But it's
I was
not.
going to say there is a bit of this is what you can take away from this.
Yeah.
But it isn't and that's what they all learned that day.
Yeah.
Instead
I learned
you're
to cherish every moment.
Right.
Because, yeah.
You're like, she went back, she said this is how things turned out. And then you're kind of like, I see how I could get meaning from this journey, from this situation.
I like that.
Yeah. And they're just pleasant,
Yeah.
There's something to be said about having a book where you're like, I'm going to pick this up and it's going to be a nice experience.
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to be slapped in the face with a third act, cancer diagnosis or,
Right.
sudden hit by a bus death. I'm going to leave and I'm going to feel okay.
I think there's something to be said too for because in a weird way, it's like the way that book is set up, the bad thing already happened.
Right.
And so it's kind of like then you go back in time. But it's not like an intense trying to prevent the thing from happening or
right, because
whatever.
they've made that not an option.
Right.
They've said it's gonna and I also like that because it prevents a lot of the Terminator 2, but she went back and she destroyed the thing, but then by destroying the thing, then that means that her husband or the love of her life won't travel back in time, and so she won't have a son, and so they won't be able to, and so everything starts over again. It removes that.
Yeah.
It's like you go back, you have a conversation that the other person will probably not remember or will just assume was part of their regular day.
Right.
And nothing will change.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a much tidier way to handle it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because it's I read a book called How to Live Safely in a Science Fiction Universe, something like that, by Charles Yu. And it was similar. It was like a time travel story, but it was way, way less about how does time travel work? You know, it was a lot more just focused on the fact that this guy can travel back in time, and he basically is just well, I tried to travel back in time and figured out that I still couldn't make my father love me, and you're like, oof.
Yeah.
But for me, I like super dumb time travel comic book stories, but I also like the kind of story where it's maybe a science fiction or in this case supernatural kind of thing, but it's not really about that. It's not about time travel. It's about if you had the opportunity to have this experience, but the experience doesn't actually change the world, how would you use that time or what would it mean to you?
And it does kind of invite that question. You start to think if I could go back in time and talk to someone from my life,
turn back time
for 10 minutes. Who would I pick and what would I say?
Yeah.
Knowing that I would be the same person in the same position at the end of it.
Yeah.
Well,
and what does it mean to you to maybe have said something, even if it wasn't received? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. It was a really nice, warm book.
Yeah.
And, not everything is happy in it. The woman whose husband has Alzheimer's, she comes back and he still has Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
But the way she lives her life changes.
Interesting.
And, I don't know. I find that encouraging.
Okay.
And kind of nice.
It's nice too, I think. And, I don't think I'm saying anything wild to say that, there are people in the world right now who are not having a great time.
Yeah.
And things are, changing a lot from day to day, it seems. And it is nice to have things like that in your life because I think it helps you feel there's some stability somewhere.
Right.
And there's some things that last longer than the next week, And
well, in the time travel thing, it really makes you think time passes, things change.
Yeah.
And the way things are now will not be the way things are later.
That's true.
Yeah. I think you should read it.
Okay.
I thought it was really nice.
Yeah, it's bumped up the list.
Nice.
I sound disappointed, not because I'm I don't want to read it, because I was
because the list is long.
Yeah.
I know.
The list is more books than I will read before I'm dead. So it's nice to knock one off now and then.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
To be well, I'm not going to bother with that
Great.
then.
Thanks a lot. Another book.
Yeah, it would have been much better if you were oh, it's hot garbage. They spend a bunch of time talking about science nonsense.
Yeah.
They have this weird tube you get in, you travel back in time, and then you try and not sleep with Leah Thompson.
Yeah. Watch your photo fade away as you listen to Buddy Holly tunes.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. All right.
That's a classic, though.
It is a classic.
Make no mistake.
I have no issue. I take no issue with Back to the Future.
All right. I am curious about Dragon Ball Z just because I know what it is, but only in a very memey way.
Okay. Yeah, so first there was Dragon Ball, and that follows the exploits of Son Goku, who is basically a feral child in a very literal sense.
Okay.
Who turns out to be really good at fighting, and there's a martial arts tournament. He has a tail. He's based on the Monkey King from Chinese lore. And yeah, the first volume is basically, there's like a big fighting tournament and it's very goofy. It's very fun. And then Dragon Ball Z was like the second series.
Okay.
So Son Goku is like an adult, a young adult. He has a son of his own.
Okay.
He met his wife at a fighting tournament when he met his wife somehow when they were both kids. And he said he would come back to visit her sometime, and then he never did. And so then she showed up to fight him at a fighting tournament to force him to interact with her, and then was like, "We have to get married." And he said, "Okay." And then,
I don't know. Do you want to be married to the guy who couldn't even be bothered to come back and have a conversation?
Well, there's an interesting thing about the character of Goku, especially young Goku, which is he's like the most optimistic. He's kind of a dummy, but like the friendliest, kindest dummy. And like
he's a golden retriever.
Exactly. Yes, 100%. He is like the template of a golden retriever. Except it's like, imagine if a golden retriever attitude was in the body of like the, strongest, deadliest dog of all time.
Okay.
And like, but had no desire to hurt anyone.
Right.
So Dragon Ball Z, what's interesting about it, like you said, it's very memed. The phrase like going Super Saiyan is a big thing. If you ever go to like a gym, there will be some bro with a shirt that he probably cut the sleeves off himself that has Goku on it. That's like the most likely Dragon Ball Z thing for people to encounter. Card. Yeah. Yep. If you go to if you made I'm going to the gym in January bingo card, there will be some guy with that on his shirt. He's either probably the last person you want to talk to in the gym or the nicest person in the gym, depending on, many other factors. He's probably either a sweet nerd or a tool.
Okay.
Let's just be real.
Okay.
So Dragon Ball, here's what's interesting about Dragon Ball Z. It was, I think it was very popular because the anime series was like one of the first big series to come to the United States. Mm-hmm. It was on Cartoon Network, and they would show it. And I remember watching it and I liked it. But the problem was like, two guys would be fighting and one of them's going to throw a fireball. So he's like charging up to do it. This would be like 3 episodes. Like that one sentence is like 3 episodes of this show. Mm-hmm. And like after a while I was like, I can't watch this because like I cannot commit to this long of a time, and like it's making me feel so impatient because I'm like, could this proceed at some kind of a pace?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Could something happen? And like every episode, it was kind of like a template too, probably for like Lost, where it's like nothing happens for 55 minutes. And then in minute 55:30, it's got like this huge cliffhanger thing. And you're like, damn it, now I have to watch the next one.
I've got an analogy for this.
Okay. Did
you ever watch The Nanny?
No, I'm familiar with it, but...
So there's an episode of The Nanny where Fran, who's the main character, somebody shows up at the house and they're chatting and they find out that they used to both watch the same soap opera. Mm. And the friend is like, oh, I haven't watched that in 15 years. Catch me up. What's going on? And Fran goes, okay, so they're still at the whatever party.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a lot like that. So, like, I think that's what turned me off from reading the comics, because I was like, I can't just read 5 volumes of 2 guys standing across from each other on a field, charging up to then punch each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I cannot do it. It turns out the comics move much faster.
Okay.
Way faster. It is so much more satisfying an experience. Like, it's unreal. And I'm like, whoever made this cartoon is like a monster. Like,
maybe they just took too long to animate everything, and so they needed to have them standing still, charging up.
It's possible. I mean, like, there are many explanations I could think of for why, or like maybe when it was originally made, it was being made in parallel to the comics. So they were like, well, like,
gotta wait for the next.
We have 3 weeks of episodes until we have enough material. So I don't know. I don't know exactly why.
Okay.
So maybe it's not like a mean thing. Maybe it wasn't intended as a cruelty to hurt a young me. I guess it's possible there are some things in the world that weren't designed to piss me off. But anyway, reading the comics is like such a better experience. And it's like the storyline is the same. I mean, the storyline is very like, it's fun. It's like, martial arts nonsense. It's like if you like kung fu movies and or like playing Street Fighter or something, like this is kind of a blend of those things.
Okay.
There's like aliens and stuff and just weird nonsense and lots of fun stuff. So I think if there's anyone out there who was like me and liked watching that show, but was like,
got fed up.
My God, could this speed up a little bit? Or if you're watching it right now and you've, using modern technology, you're like 1.5 times speed makes this a lot. Try the comics. The comics are much better paced.
All right.
It makes for a way better version of the experience. It's probably time-wise one of the rare situations where reading the book is probably faster than watching the show, which is wild. But I mean, I'm currently putting this as the number one for me version of book is better than the show / movie. Just because it's so much faster and so much more enjoyable being faster.
Right.
The contrast is wild.
Okay.
So that's Dragon Ball Z. Cool. It's great. It's super fun. And I'm like, now I understand why all these tools were wearing this at the gym. Because I'm like, oh, this is pretty fun. And that, but I'm also
get
like,
your own t-shirt and cut the sleeves off.
I do. I know. I'm like, where are my scissors? I gotta get going on this. But also, I'm like, someone's going to come up to me and be like, that's awesome. And then I'll be like, oh, yeah. How'd you like when he went, up to the guy in the tall tower and found the sensu beans and all this stuff? And they're going to be like, what? I'll be like, oh, you're not that kind of nerd. Yeah, what you said. I'm not either. I was testing you to make sure you're not a nerd.
So I don't waste my time. Fly, Peter. Be proud.
I would, but like, God forbid I ever have to go to a public gym again instead of my horrible garage gym, which is great because I'm the only one there. Yeah, which is the exact temperature of the outside world year round. But I prefer it because I'm the only one in there.
Fair.
But
as an introvert, I understand this emotion.
Yeah, so like if I ever did go to a public gym again, I probably wouldn't wear a Dragon Ball Z shirt, not because I don't want to, but because I don't want to have a conversation with anyone. I would want to wear whatever apparel. I'd probably just plain black shirt. Just be like, there's nothing to be said about it.
Yeah.
That's all I could think to do.
Hey, flying under the radar. Something to be said for it.
It would probably be the best thing to do this. And this is a little like whatever, but like, I think if I wore a plain white shirt that had a hole over one of my nipples, I think that would probably be the best way to avoid talking to anyone.
I mean, fair.
Right?
Because I would definitely not approach you. I'd be like, oh, one of these guys.
Yeah. Well, not even one of these guys. I would be the only one. The sleeves are fully intact. The rest of the shirt's intact. It's just like there's a tear right there.
All right. Let's move on.
All right. I want to hear about traveling on the path of Joni Mitchell.
All right. So I'm listening to this as an audiobook. I'm actually not quite finished with it yet. Are you like familiar with Joni Mitchell in anything beyond like I know who she is kind of a way?
I mean, beyond like some songs and stuff?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So I would say I'm somewhere in between you and like crazy fans of Joni Mitchell, but
somewhere on that spectrum.
like Blue is one of my favorite albums.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of songs by Joni Mitchell that I care about deeply and I would consider like favorite songs of mine. But I'm also not one of those people who could be like, oh, Joni did a cover of that song with this person at this festival. And like I'm not one of those people.
They recorded it in this studio with these session musicians. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
To the degree where I didn't know that Joni Mitchell was Canadian. Like,
oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I associate her so deeply with like California and with Chelsea in New York. Like, those are places like when I think of Joni Mitchell, I think of like Laurel Canyon.
Yeah. Okay.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess now that I think about it, I'm not thinking about Vancouver when I think of her.
Well, she was actually Saskatchewan.
I don't think about that either.
Yeah, she was like in the middle of prairie nowhere, Saskatchewan. But this is basically like a combination of, it's like the author is very clear this is not a biography. Like she is not trying to biographize Joni Mitchell. She doesn't feel qualified to do it and doesn't want to do it. She is more exploring her life as through a critical lens for her music. So this is like, she considers herself more of a music critic.
Okay.
So she's learning about Joni Mitchell's life and how it ties into, influences, changes her music.
Okay.
And so kind of, it is like the story of Joni Mitchell's life, but not in a, she was born and whatever to these parents and went to elementary school here. It's like, more like she was born in this place and that influenced her because, she actually got polio as a child and was in bed for a year and she managed to pretty much recover from it. Like, as you know, like she's still kicking and until she got sick in like 2015. I think she had an aneurysm.
Oh, okay.
She was like doing fine. But it influenced her music because she had some nerve damage in her left hand, and she's famously a guitar player. And so she had to develop new ways of doing chords and chord progressions and tuning her guitar to get the sounds that she wanted because she didn't have the deftness in her fingers that she wanted to play certain songs. So it's more like telling the story of how she had polio to describe how it affected her later as a musician.
Right. So this is why she made these musical choices. Actually has like a concrete objective reason.
Right. She plays guitar in a weird way. And here's why. Because, she had polio and how she was influenced by these other, musicians who also played their instruments oddly because of other reasons. Like because one was, right-handed and had to play their guitar upside down because they had to steal their brothers and so had to learn different ways of doing chords and like that kind of thing. And how it influenced her sound and her technique and all of that.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I like that kind of stuff. Even if I'm not even if I didn't particularly care about the artist, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And she's doing, in my opinion, a really great job of looking at Joni Mitchell, not dispassionately, but like even-handedly. Because there is definitely a cult of Joni Mitchell where it's like, oh, she's a poet, a genius. She wrote, Big Yellow Taxi and she wrote, Coyote and she wrote, A Case of You and like she's a genius. And I do think that is true. Like she's an amazing songwriter. She wrote some of like songs that have deep meaning to me as a person and I listen to them and they affect me on an emotional level and all of that. But she's also a complex and not always likable person. Like and she's great at pointing out, instances where she's bigoted or she is, buying her own story or like the very cannily packaging herself in a certain way to get, exposure, because she came up in a time when women weren't necessarily automatically going to be taken seriously as like serious musicians. Sure. And she was part of a group of women who were starting to make that a reality. She was one of the people like her and Janis Joplin and Buffy St. Marie and like Joan Baez and these women who are like, we're to be taken seriously, you know, as musicians and not just like pop stars almost, you know, like
I was going to say, because there's like, they occupy this weird space where they're not pop stars.
Right.
And I don't mean that as like a quality.
Right.
But just like what they were doing and what I can't think of someone from that time necessarily. Like a Madonna later on. It's a very different thing.
Keep thinking of Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
When I'm listening to this book and I'm thinking about Joni Mitchell, I feel that she got a lot of the same criticisms and a lot of the same focus. Like there's this intense focus on her personal life. And it irritates her. She's like, even though her songs are personal and you can see, you know, that she's telling personal stories through her music. Like when people would say, oh, she's a confessional songwriter, she would like snap. She hated that. She was like, you should be concentrating on how my music makes you feel. If you're thinking about me, then I'm failing, you know? And I'm thinking, I'm seeing like these through lines to Taylor Swift where it's like, oh, she's writing this about this one boyfriend she had. And it's like, you know, it's similar.
I do. Yeah. Kind of like, I remember there's this poem that I really like, and it's about basically how, like, when you read poetry, it's not necessarily about figuring out the poem, like solving the poem. And, like, I do think that songs are that way.
Yeah.
But, like, when it's a big pop song, people aren't as likely, you know, I don't think anybody, to my knowledge, is really like, what is We Will Rock You really about? Or like, what is Don't Stop Believin'? You know, like, what is it really about? You know, and like people just accept what it is.
Right.
Or like accept it at face value, and they're not like, oh, you know, maybe Freddie Mercury, this is what was going on in his personal life.
Right.
And so, you know what I mean? Like there are Queen songs that are like that, but not those big things or like.
Well, and at the time, there were male singer-songwriters who would get, like, they were doing the same thing, like Neil Young and, like, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. But they never got, like, labeled with that confessional thing.
Right.
Like, it was still very gendered. And she's exploring, like, the very gendered world of music at the time.
Yeah.
And how, like, even when people were writing articles saying that Joni Mitchell is, like, a gifted musician or a genius or whatever, like the article would start by talking about like her long blonde hair and her high cheekbones and, you know, how she could be a model, but here she is and she's a musician. And like, it's interesting because I think that so much of it hasn't changed. Oh, you know, when you think about music and like when I was growing up, you have these songs that were famously sung by like amazingly talented Black women. And then in the video, it's like a dancer who's lip syncing. Right. You know, or it even happens sometimes with men when you think about like Milli Vanilli. Right. You know, all of a sudden it's like, oh, they weren't actually singing it. They were lip syncing. Right. How much of it gets like sanitized and packaged up and it has to look a certain way for the music industry to like endorse it or package it or make it available. Yeah. And so I don't know, it's a lot. It's making me think a lot about her as a person and how complicated she is, which I appreciate because, you know, she's a great musician and a legend and also sometimes unlikable and sometimes mean. Right. And I appreciate that. Like, she's a whole person. Yeah. And also it's making me think about the way that music works and how a lot of it hasn't changed, but at the same time, there are ways for people who the music industry won't get behind to get their music in front of people now, like on Spotify or YouTube or SoundCloud. Yeah. And you can find, like it is possible to find music now if you can wade through the huge amounts of it. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a mixed thing now, right, too? Because like, I feel like now, but especially then, it was kind of like, well, if you're not like pop music or like arena rock or something like that, but you're also not classical music, you know what I mean? It's like you're in this weird in between thing. I'm trying to think of like, because now I think there are more artists that I would put in that space. Like if you take like a Bon Iver or something, and you're like, oh, okay, like, or
maybe like The National.
Right.
And you're like, they're not like
You've got some folk, you've got some jazz, some blues.
Like if someone was like, they're a pop band, I'd be like, eh. And if they're like, they're a rock band, I'd be like, eh. And like, so I think there's a lot more of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it feels like today it's so hard to like, connect your music to people who want to hear it.
Yeah.
That it's like without that quick gimmick of like, they're like this, it's like so hard to.
Yeah. Yeah. And without like a studio pushing to get like your music video on YouTube and like getting it to go viral or, it used to be the radio. Now it would probably be like Spotify, like figuring out a way to force it in people's path to make it a sensation. Like, you can't do that yourself.
Yeah, I think too, like it is interesting to think about how it's still like it was then and it is now. Like, I don't know, we have this weird relationship with celebrity that we're like, we expect them to be sort of perfect in a way that I'm like, that is not realistic. But also I'm like, do we need that? You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily want to like follow a musician who's like a horrible criminal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
there are lines that you'd rather not see crossed.
There's like an ethical question there, I guess. But I don't know, a criminal or not a criminal, a celebrity. I think of them as all criminals, but like a celebrity who maybe, I don't know, has a hostile relationship with the press. Like, I think of like a Harrison Ford.
Sure.
And he's kind of curmudgeonly
Sean
and doesn't
Penn
really
without
like
the punching.
Yeah. And he's like, I don't really like doing interviews, and he's like, I'm tired of talking about Star Wars all the time or whatever. And I'm like, I don't, that's not something that I'm like, I like him because of that. But I'm like, I mean, if I was in my 70s and people were still asking me asinine questions about a fake spaceship that I was in like 50 years ago, I would be like, shut up. Stop asking me that.
Yeah.
Ask probably any other nerd in this room knows the answer to that question better than I do. Stop. Like, stop, please.
Yeah.
Anyway. It is, like.
It's similar. Like, it definitely dispels any like rose-colored facade that people might have about her. Like, and not in a she's a bad person way, but in a like she's a human way. And she was a human being who had ambition at a time when it was maybe there were extra steps to take to reach your ambition when you're somebody like her.
Yeah.
Even though there were definitely people who would have even more steps,
Yeah. It's like, I feel like sometimes we hold celebrities to higher standards than like the people we know in real life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know, that seems weird to me. Like, if I would accept something from like a good friend and I'm like, well, I don't know, that doesn't make them a monster. I'm like, well, why would I care if Taylor Swift did it?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care.
Well, then there are even some characteristics where I'm like, that would bother me and I wouldn't like it if like my best friend behaved this way.
Right.
But I also wouldn't like write them out of my life.
Yeah.
And it's similar. It's like there are things that, there are characteristics that Joni Mitchell has that I'm like, that's not an attractive quality. But also like, first of all, I can respect that she's a human being with flaws because I am positive that there are characteristics to my personality that people don't enjoy. And there's not much I can do about that. And also, I acknowledge her circumstances where like she wanted to do things with her life and she crafted an image of herself and a persona. And, she lived her life in a way to make that happen. And even if that wasn't always pleasant to look at, like you got to respect the hustle,
Yeah.
She wanted to make a living as a singer-songwriter and get recognition for her skill at it.
Yeah.
And, fair play. Like, that doesn't seem like a lot to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's a little bit like, hot in the news right now is like Katy Perry went to space.
Yeah.
And, I'm like, I mean, I don't particularly care. I'm just like, who cares? But also, I guess I'm like, hey, look, if I'm not the biggest fan of Jeff Bezos, but on the other hand, if he was like, I love the podcast, do you want to go to space? I'd be like, yeah, I'll go to space.
I don't want to go to space.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
But like, if he offered me, if he's like, you could go to space, I'd be like, I'm going. You bet. I would probably check online and be like, what bad things have I said about Jeff Bezos? Is he sending me up there to explode me? You know? But
I want to go to space as much as I want to go to the deep sea, which is negative amounts
I would
of want.
rather go to space than the deep sea.
Yeah. They're both like inhospitable environments where if your bubble gets broken, you die. And not interested in that.
I think the space is more appealing to me simply for zero gravity, where the deep sea does not offer that.
I don't know. I feel like that would be like, I enjoy that feeling when I'm on a roller coaster and it's like, woo, and then it goes away. If it were like, woo, for 60 minutes straight, I think I'd be like, ugh.
I remember
that turns into I'm going to vomit.
I read the book Packing for Mars by Mary Roach, and she went on the vomit comet, that gives 0G. And she said zero gravity feels great. She was like, you don't even realize it, but like how much your hair weighs and how it's always pulling on your head until you're in zero gravity.
As somebody who has had really long hair and then cut it all off, that is real.
Yeah. And she was like, everything in your body feels that way.
Yeah.
She's like, you don't realize everything is dragging you down into the mud all day. And then you're in zero gravity for a beautiful 30 seconds. And
I have read interviews with people who have been like on the International Space Station, and they talk about how different their face looks because like their body is like even, like like all of your fluids are not being pulled to your feet. So that stuff stays in your face and your face is a different shape. And like,
maybe we should all be doing like meetings and stuff laying down.
maybe.
That should become the new standard.
Oh, I like it. Let's make it
the new standard selfie. All right. So, we talked about Art of Noticing and Dragon Ball Z. I also had Choose Your Own Adventure, #1, Cave of Time. I just mostly wanted to talk about this because I learned some things about Choose Your Own Adventure and its author, Edward Packard. I learned that he came up with the idea for the series because he used to tell his daughters bedtime stories. And then one night he was like, I couldn't think of anything. So I was like, well, what do you want to have happen? He probably didn't say it with that much attitude.
Right.
And then because, kids are cruel, they both said different things. So he told 2 different stories with the different endings and was like, this gives me an idea.
And now he has $1 million.
Yep. I also found out there is one Choose Your Own Adventure book that Edward Packard wrote, UFO 5440, where there is the best ending of the book is not one you can access organically. There is no series of choices. You would just have to cheat and flip through the book to get to it. And this was an intentional choice on his part.
Well, that's just a jerk move.
It's pretty mind-blowing. My top 3 endings that you can get from Cave of Time. Number 3 is you save everyone on the Titanic because you travel back in time and then you're like, the ship is going to sink. We need to get out of here. But the reason I like it is because it's kind of an ambivalent ending. It's like you save everyone, but you cannot get back to your time.
Okay.
So it's kind of presented as a mixed bag, and I'm like, you saved a lot of people from a horrific death.
Yeah.
So, pretty good.
But also, no Titanic movie.
That was the other thing is I was like, maybe James Cameron would make another banger Terminator movie instead, which I would trade Titanic for that.
A new Alien.
Or a new Alien. Or maybe he'd be done with Avatar by now.
Oh, yeah.
2 is you meet up with another time traveler who's from the year 2022, which was the distant future at this point. And she said there are no cars and everyone glides around on bikes and walks everywhere. And it's nice nature trails. And
wouldn't that be nice?
It is pretty amazing. And then number 1 is you go back in time, you meet a guy who has tuberculosis, which I was like, oh no, I'm definitely going to get tuberculosis and die because that's how these books go. There are many horrific deaths in this book. But actually what happens is you convince him to come back with you to your time where they are able to cure his tuberculosis. And then he decides to stay there and become a history teacher because basically he can just talk about what was going on in his daily life.
See, now we can use this book as a hook to get John Green to come on and talk about his new book.
Yeah, tuberculosis.
Everything is tuberculosis.
John Green, in your scientific opinion, what would it be? What I found funny about this, though, is I was like, this guy time traveled. He think about from his perspective, what an amazing experience this is. This kid comes, says he's from the future, went through a cave of time, and then is like, why don't you come back with me to this cave of time? And, maybe we can cure your tuberculosis. And you're like, on the one hand, this is a pretty bad idea. On the other hand, I'm dying of tuberculosis. I have very little to lose here. Why not? And then you go back, turns out it is correct. They cure you. And you go through all of that to become a history teacher and then deal with a bored me in class. It's very, very interesting arc that, just kind of craps out. The other thing that I thought was really funny is I found that Edward Packard wrote 59 hypothetical questions that he put into a packet, which are really weird. One of them was kind of just a desert island book question. You've been sentenced to live a year in a cabin with one book, and what do you bring? Which I think is a good question for book nerds, but I've decided, I don't know what my answer is yet, but I've decided that I need to come up with a stupid answer to that question because I think it would be funnier to have a book for a year in a cabin that I didn't even particularly like. Because then when people are like, why did you pick that? You'd be like, I don't know. I made a terrible decision. I don't know why, but that's
Lucky
become
by
my
Jackie Collins.
Yeah, just like I read it 9 times. I brought a VC Andrews book, not even a good one. The worst one.
One of the ghost written ones from recent times.
Yeah, it was probably written by her great niece or something because it's like that's definitely how that works. Is it's genetically passed on. Anyway, the other one is Gantz by Hiroya Oku, which is a manga. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is a rough read in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Because it's
not for the faint of heart.
No. It's very violent. There's a lot of very sexual artwork in it.
Okay. Not
for the kids, I would say. If I was talking about what I would recommend for kids and they pulled that off, I'd be like, hey, buddy, maybe.
Let's find something else.
Dragon Ball is really great. And it's like there's a lot of very sexual cheesecakey type art that, you'll see in manga sometimes. Also, Third Strike, the main character is horrible. He's a horrible person. Mm. He's a teenager, so, he gets some leeway, but he's like a very selfish person. And you're subject to his inner thoughts, which are not good. Mm. And he's a jerk. I think what's amazing about the series, though, is it's like it kind of starts going into a redemptive arc. And so it's the basic of the series is...
So is this ongoing or have you finished the whole thing?
I haven't finished it.
Okay.
The basic premise of the series is people who die wake up in this apartment with other people. There's this black sphere in there, and the black sphere opens up, and there are these sort of super suits in there and a bunch of weird weapons and stuff like that. And then it teleports them and tells them they have to go kill these aliens. And so they are teleported back into parts of Tokyo that they're familiar with. Then they have no choice but to hunt down and kill an alien. Nobody can see them, and nobody can see that the alien is an alien or see the aliens. Mm-hmm. So it's weird. And it's like, are they in purgatory? Are they in an afterlife? What's going on? There's a lot of questions about it. But basically, that's what they're tasked with doing. And so what's interesting is you follow this character who's a horrible person, and he's a horrible person for a long time. It's not like 2 issues in, it's like, well, and then he learned the power of friendship.
Right.
it's several volumes in before he starts to turn or change or be like a more someone who you're like, yeah, that's a good choice you're making. You're doing a good thing. And I think I'm very attracted to books like this that almost seem to consciously try and push people away. I think a lot of people might read it as being edgelordy, maybe, or like, it's like, oh, what would be the most messed up thing that could happen? And I don't interpret it that way because I don't think that's the intent of the author. I don't think that's what they were trying to do. I think it's more about like, I think to have a truly redemptive character arc, they have to be genuinely bad people. For me to like get something out of it. Because I think for me, a redemptive story has to be like, well, this person has to actually need to be redeemed in order for it to have any meaning. Because I'm like, I mean, if they were just impolite one time and like the redemptive arc is about like making up for that, I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm like, save it for your blog. But, save it for your recipe blog where you talk about. Anyway, it's very off-putting for a lot of readers. I bet a lot of readers try it and don't get very far.
Yeah.
But if it's something you can hang with or something that is intriguing for you, or like if you read like volume 1 and you were like, yeah, I don't know. The story does get more interesting and there's more story to it as you go. It's a bit of a slow burn, so I think it's tough. It's very similar in that way to Berserk, which is a favorite of mine. But I'm like, you gotta read like 5 volumes before it gets to the real story and to where you would start to see why people like it. And maybe that's the big thing is like a lot of people do like it, and you have to get a little bit further into it to really get why people like it. Yeah. Okay. So that's like a very qualified recommendation.
Okay.
If you're looking for something, if you like a Berserk or anything similar to that, you might like this one.
Right. A recommendation for the right reader.
Yeah. But it's definitely not for everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
All right. So I talked about Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi and Traveling on the Path of Joni Mitchell by Ann Powers. I also brought Water Moon by Samantha Sato Yambao. This is another one of those like cozy Asian like fantasy literature kind of things. It is about mystical pawn shop basically, and it exists in a kind of side dimension. So people who need the pawn shop there's like this ramen restaurant that's very popular, and people will line up to go to it, and the people who need the pawn shop will open the door, and instead of it being a ramen restaurant, they'll be in the pawn shop.
Oh, okay.
And the pawn shop basically purchases regrets. So if you have a major life regret, you can sell it to the pawn shop if the pawn shop assesses that it has value. And it starts basically on the day that the pawn shop owner's daughter is inheriting. So he's retiring and she is taking over the pawn shop. And on her first day, she wakes up to find that it's been broken into and ransacked, and her father is missing along with one of their treasured items. And she has to figure it out, basically, with the help of somebody who wanders into the pawn shop who is not like their usual customer. So
interesting.
Yeah. But in that same vein of like cozy Asian fantasy literature.
I'm not proud of this, but my mind immediately went to the ill-fated Friday the 13th TV series.
I didn't see it.
It's basically based in like a haunted pawn shop or something.
Oh.
What's weird about it is it seems to have nothing to do with Jason Voorhees. So I'm not sure why.
I kind of remember this getting released on DVD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, as soon as you were saying that, I was thinking about that and then thinking about like, oh, I watched the first episode. It was really terrible.
Yeah, no, it's not related to that at all.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I didn't think it was like all cursed,
Yeah, no.
Cursed daggers. And
people's regrets.
If I sell my regrets, do I no longer feel them?
Yeah. So basically, since it is a pawn shop, you have like a day where if you leave and you decide that you've made a mistake, you can go back and get your regrets back. But I don't think anybody really does.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds like a win-win for me.
Yeah.
Do they pay you for them? Or they just take them?
I feel like you get tea, if I recall correctly. Yeah.
All right.
And there's a whole other aspect to like the nature of this pawn shop but we're not going to get into it. We don't have the time, nor do I want to spoil anything.
Do you like how I was like, I'd unload my regrets gladly, and then I was like, wait, do I get money? I already immediately was like, well, if I'm not going to get any money,
I'm out.
Yeah, I'll keep my regrets. Thank you very much,
sir.
I'll continue being miserable. Show you.
So that's Watermoon.
Okay.
And I also brought Just Our Luck by Denise Williams, which is a romance novel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about this woman who is finding it difficult to like get her life in shape. Like she can't seem to keep a job. She can't seem to like find a stable place to live. Like she feels the judgment of her family all the time and this pressure to like make something of herself, and she's feeling the pressure. And one day she spends like her last dollar on a lottery ticket, and she carries it around all day. And then she goes like it's closing time, and she sees this donut shop, and she goes in and she's like, I'm going to get a donut. And the guy, the son of the owner, is like manning the desk, and he gets her a donut, and then he has to go in the back to like figure something out, and she realizes that she doesn't have any money, so she leaves the lottery ticket. And they had like a little flirty connection. So she leaves the lottery ticket because she's got to go, and so she takes the donuts and leaves the lottery ticket, and she's like, I didn't have the cash, but I'll leave that and I'll come back. When I have my purse, I'll come back. And then the next day, it turns out the lottery ticket is a big winner. And the guy is like, I can't keep this. So he manages to hunt her down by making basically a viral video. And it turns into this like little moment where she's like, you pretend to be my boyfriend and my family will feel like I'm, in a stable situation and like maybe I'm getting my life together. And you will get all of this publicity for the donut shop, which is failing, and the family's going to have to sell it. So she's like, it's win-win. You'll get all of this business because everyone will be like, oh, we're the cute donut shop couple that met because of this lottery ticket.
Everyone wants to go to the donut shop with the
Exactly. And I will get some time to like figure my life out.
Okay.
And so it turns into this cute little fake dating, romance. That's, nothing groundbreaking, but it's fun and a delightful way to spend a few hours.
Nice.
Yeah.
One of those classic rom-com relationships of mutually beneficial.
Exactly.
And then like,
but don't catch feelings.
Yeah. It'd be the worst is if we also fell in love.
That would never happen.
Well, let's not worry about that. Sometimes I do. Like when I watch a zombie movie, I'm always like waiting to find out if zombie movies exist in this world.
Do people? Do they catch on and they're like,
oh, this is zombies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is The Walking Dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. Or are they going to be like, no one knows what's happening? You know what I mean?
Right.
And like, but I haven't thought of that till just now with rom-coms. But I'm like, do rom-coms exist in this world? Because if they do, you should be very suspicious that you're going to fall in love. Because this seems like the kind of situation that causes people to fall in love in those.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I do think that generally people in the books that I have read, they seem aware of like that this is like a trope in like romance novels and movies, but also they're like, but it's silly and
but
like that's
I'm
not real
gonna
life.
Do that. Yeah. I won't fall in love.
Yeah.
I'm not one of them. I'm not one of those goofy fictional characters.
That's right.
Okay. That makes sense. All right, we did it.
Yay.
8 books down the tubes.
Down the tubes.
The coffee got cold.
Be gone.
But not by
the coffee's
too
now
much?
cold. We got to finish it up and get out of here before we get trapped and turn into ghosts.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. Speaking of ghosts, Skeleta, the new album by Ghost, came out. For those who enjoy, for those who partake.
Thank you for that.
Go home and
hey, they announced that they're making a new series of Lord of the Rings, I think movies or a TV show based on the Silmarillion, starring, what's his name, Magneto.
Oh, Ian McKellen?
Ian McKellen.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And
That's
made by
great.
Peter Jackson.
I'm happy because when I watched the movie Cats, Ian McKellen's in it, and he was drinking from a saucer of milk, and I was like, oh, this cannot be his last movie.
No.
It wasn't, though. He
actually did a stage play, a one-man show to celebrate his 80th birthday, and he performed like lots of pieces from stuff that he was famous for, and he sang the song that he did in that movie.
He wasn't bad in it. He
was a theater cat, I believe.
Yes, he was. He wasn't bad in it or anything.
He's never bad. He's like an actor.
He was one of many of the people in that movie that you were like,
you're better than this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also I was like, you know what the real star of that movie was? The casting person. They killed it. Like the star power they managed to cram in that movie, I was like, it's impressive.
I know, you'd think that of all people, like there are so many people in that I love and love to see perform, and it's a musical, and I'm a big musical girl, and I had no desire to see it.
You know, though, they did not cast the right people in the main roles. Here's what you got to do, guys. Listen up, dummies. When you create a movie from a musical, the people who play the main parts and sing the big songs should be excellent singers.
They should be
That's
Broadway
the number
people.
one.
I'm going to take a stand and say they should be Broadway people. See Wicked, Cynthia Erivo, who is one of the best Broadway and theater singers, perhaps singers full stop, performing today, in my opinion.
Yeah, like I watched clips of Cats, the movie, the musical instead of the movie, and I was like, oh, I get it. Like the singing is really great. And it's like a very athletic feat of singing. And the way they sing these songs is like a lot more meaningful.
Yeah.
And
that movie turned it into a CG spectacular. When people go see it in on the stage to look at the cool dancing, you need really, really good dancers.
Yeah.
And to hear the amazing songs, because the songs are beautiful when sung by people with amazing voices. Yeah.
And I'm like, look, have James Corden in it for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't have him be the main focus. You know what I mean? I'm like, if you have...
I find him difficult to enjoy now that it turns out he's kind of a jerk.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, apparently he's a real jerk.
You know?
Like a mean to his waiter kind of a jerk.
Oh, okay. There were so many things to be destroyed by.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I didn't see this. This is something I've learned from elsewhere. But
But we can be done talking about it because I feel like I should be paying a professional to listen to me talk about.
Yeah, I don't. I avoided Cats. Thank you.
It was a good choice.
This is a you problem.
I mean, it's worth watching just for the sort of bafflement. If you like being confused in a how did this happen kind of way? Who decided this was okay?
My best friend, theater person, who we had the season tickets to go see the musicals together. She watched it, and she was watching it in a, can you believe this is real kind of way? And I was like, you can enjoy that one by yourself.
Yeah. You know what? Cats the movie, here's who I recommend it to. You know how in your life at some point you switch over from being a young person to being an adult, and one of the hallmarks of that to me is when you realize there are a lot of professional adults who have no idea what they're doing, and you're like, I put so much faith in so many adults over the years that didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
If you are feeling like all adults know what they're doing, watch the movie Cats and recognize how many people made that happen and created that result. Clearly did not know what they were doing.
Yeah. There are still a bunch of successful people in the world who are phoning in their best take on things and hoping it works.
They're just like, this will make money. And then you're like, oof, I don't know. But at what cost?
What have you done to the rest of us?
All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye.